everything was possible in the 1980s. This has been the wildest era of all time, when Formula 1 had over 1,000 horsepower, Group B was still in the game, and the Dakar Rally was in its infancy. In 1979, trucks were solely used for logistics and assistance purposes during the Dakar, and everyone thought they would end up far behind cars and motorcycles. In a few years' time, DAF would prove everyone wrong when their twin-engine beast overtook a Group B designed Peugeot 205 T16 at over 220 km per hour. The twin-engine beast would appear out of nowhere. It was Jan De Rooy who made the DAF name famous. De Rooy is a former motocross rider and became an entrepreneur in road transport. He managed to get the funds, courage and passion to enter the Dakar Rally with a self-modified race truck. The truck was based on a stock DAF NTT 2800, lightly modified for racing. Powered by a stock Leyland-licensed 6-cylinder, the Sixwheeler had a pronounced nose as a typical conventional truck would, with a nickname, the Nose. The ratio of teams entering and finishing the race was wildly different back then, and it was relatively easy to win if one didn't get lost or had a bad accident. Only 9 out of 20 trucks arrived that year, yet during his first season in 1982, the Dutchman managed to win in its category over 10 tons and was determined to return for a truck victory. Interestingly, this engine was originally a Leyland 0680 with a mechanical injection pump. The gear-driven overhead valve engine used a turbo, which raised its power from 165 to 310 horsepower and a torque of 1260 Nm. This time, Jan received huge support from the factory itself. He understood marketing, and the vehicle had to be different to catch the attention of the public and journalists. In 1984, the Dutch team entered the race on a DAF FAV 3300 4x4. Known as the two-headed monster, the second cabin made it very unique. Although it was a dummy, it did hide a second 6-cylinder 400 horsepower engine which powered the front wheels, and the front 400 horsepower engine the rear ones. Ultimately, the truck had 800 horsepower and an all-wheel drive system. With a top speed of 160 km per hour, it was a completely different animal compared to the six-wheeler, but could not finish due to a mechanical failure. De Rooy wanted more, and the new truck received various other modifications. Dubbed the Bull, the 1985 model was known for its lowering rear end and a hump behind the cabin. The twin cab design was scrapped in favor of better aero and lower weight, but still based on the same DAF 3300 model. The twin-engine setup was carried over, with 450 horsepower and 420 horsepower units, 870 horsepower together thanks to twin turbos and the intercooler system. The twin cab was an assistance car that year, and the Bull finished second in 1985. Since 1986, things were deviating far away from the standard. Since it was in the middle of the 80s, the rules were quite loose and nearly everything was possible. Jan De Rooy and DAF had free hands. The DAF FAV 3600 Turbo Twin used a steel tubular frame which housed an aluminum space frame in the middle. This is where the two 11.6-liter engines were placed side by side in the middle of the car. Each of them had 3 turbos, the third one to supplement air into the other two to minimize turbo lag. The Turbo Twin delivered up to 1000 horsepower to the wheels, but due to an ugly accident, it did not finish. It did finish in 1987 when Jan De Rooy, driving the Turbo Twin 2, arrived first nearly 15 hours ahead of the second team of Karel Loprais, driving a Tatra. The Turbo Twin finished 11th overall, and De Rooy finally broke the winning streak of Mercedes trucks. They raced their own event. It is a race car special which has nothing to do with the stock truck. 2 engines, 8000 horsepower, and a top speed of 200 km per hour. It is a truck, though it drives like an automobile, says Karel Loprais. Yes, a 7.1 meters long, 2.5 meters wide, and 2.3 meters tall automobile that weighed over 10.5 tons, carrying only necessary stuff, and 760 liters of fuel. The DAF was unstoppable, at least that's what they and everybody else thought so. The Dutch team came on the 1988 rally with two new trucks, the DAF 95 TurboTwin X1 and X2. It was an all-new chassis using a lot of aluminum, including wheels to bring weight down. The 6-turbo twin-engine power unit remained, boasting of a 1220 horsepower output in the X1 and 990 horsepower in the X2, driven by Jan's teammates. It could easily achieve a top speed of 220 km/h. Some sources even mention 240 km/h, which seems unimaginable. But when you see the footage of the DAF truck slowly overtaking Ari Vatanen in a 360 horsepower Peugeot 205 T16, originally from the Group B, flying through the sand at over 200 km/h, it is still hard to believe. 10 tons of mass accelerating from 0 to 100 km/h in 7.8 seconds and doing well over 200 km/h with a fuel consumption of 1 liter per 1 km at its peak. A glorious time to live for Jan De Rooy in the 1980s. The X1 with Jan behind the wheel was doing great, being 5th overall and the first in the track category in the middle of the race. However, the X2 had a terrible crash at 160 km/h when the truck flew out into the air twice. The third time it crashed and flipped 6 times. The first and second drivers, Theo van der Rijt and Christian Roos, both suffered from serious injuries, but the navigator, Kees van Lovesen, flew out of the track with the seatbelt and died instantly. Jan De Rooy retired immediately and quit racing for upcoming years. The track category did not even start in 1989, and certain regulations were introduced to increase safety, like a 150 kph speed limit. The Czech team driving the Tatra with Karel Loprais managed to win the 1988 race, and De Rooy would not return until 2002. These ludicrous DAF trucks are to be seen in a factory museum in Eindhoven to remember those times when everything was possible, and we shall not see such machines again. I know that this is a sad story, but it seemed incredible at the same time to share it with you. If you wonder, you can drive the TurboTwin in the Dakar Desert Rally video game by Saber Interactive. Thank you very much for watching, I hope you liked it, and see you in the next one. Cheers!